Hello, very warm welcome, and it's a early start. I feel like this is a breakfast show actually when it comes to football. Good evening and welcome to the Champions League special here on Independence Live for is it Wednesday? Yeah, it is Wednesday night. And all that. Well, we're used to kicking off football at 8 o'clock, but Celtic's got the kind of early shift kicking off in Atalanta in match day 3 of the Champions League. Tonight, I'm delighted to be joined by Regan. How are you?
Michael, I'm doing great. It's great to be talking Celtic again, aye?
And I'm delighted to hear from a new contributor for the show. And welcome Timo from the Celtic Exchange podcast.
Michael, thanks for having us on. Really looking forward to chatting to you and Regan. And as Regan says, it's good to have Celtic back. Let's see how this one goes tonight.
Yeah, so we're on just before the kickoff. Just going off at 5:40 and back on at 8 o'clock for the hopefully a win for the Scottish League in the Champions League tonight. So Regan will be looking out for the team news, and we will get the team news as soon as we can. Get your comments coming in. I see that we've got 2 comments already on Facebook. Oh no, we haven't actually. Jumping the gun there as always. On Facebook and X as well. So I'll just so we'll hear from Regan for the team news, and also I've got quotes here from Brendan Rodgers and Karen McGregor. I was doing media duties last night over in Italy as well. So Timo, how do you feel tonight going into the game, considering the last time Celtic get thumped, as we say in Scotland, 7-1?
I've got mixed feelings, Michael. So we done our preview over at the Celtic Exchange. We done that yesterday. And I don't know, you're optimistic to a point because it's just kind of in your nature, I think, as a Celtic fan, or most of us, you're quite optimistic. But 7-1 is 7-1. It was such a tough result over in Germany. Paddy from our show, he was over for that one, and he said it was just as tough in real life as it was on the telly. So I don't think there's any doubt a result like that will knock the confidence of the players. And it's just how much they've learned between then and now. So obviously we beat Ross County 2-1 the game after. We had the tough game against Aberdeen at the weekend, 2-2, with the international stuff in between. And I really hope they've learned from some of the mistakes. There was a lot of mistakes to learn from, and I really hope they've taken some lessons into tonight. But there's no doubt it's a tough game. As you lads know, Atalanta are a good side, Europa League holders. So it's a tough test for the boys tonight.
And looking at that result last night, Regan, it puts in to perspective, I think, because Dortmund got beat 5-2 off of Real Madrid, and you're thinking, well, Celtic are kind of like 2 levels above these kind of teams, and it just showed you that Dortmund is a brilliant team away from home right enough, but they still get beat, you know.
Yeah, and especially because they were 2-0 up as well. I mean, I know people can be critical of Brendan Rodgers in the style, but he tries to go toe-to-toe, and that's what he tries his best to do. I want to ask Tino a question. Do you think Brendan Rodgers might change his approach tonight, Tino, or do you think he'll stick to his principles?
It's a great question, and I don't know if I've got the answer. My gut feeling is that he'll stick with his principles. He's certainly said as much in the last couple of interviews. I do sometimes think you see managers, Brendan Rodgers or otherwise, saying one thing to the media, but maybe having different conversations with players behind the scenes at training in the dressing room, for example. But I think generally speaking, he is quite stubborn in his belief in this attacking system that he's got. 4-3-3 against a side like Dortmund, playing 3 forwards against a team that reached the Champions League final. I would say it's naive, but who am I to tell Brendan Rodgers, a very experienced coach, that's naive? But I would like to see us tonight maybe sitting a wee bit deeper in a 4-5-1. So, similar personnel. And I think the team's been announced, Regan. Maybe you can confirm that in a minute. but similar personnel, but maybe with Daizen Maeda and Nicholas Kuhn sitting just a wee bit deeper tonight. They were very high up the park, particularly Kuhn against Dortmund. If we can sit in a wee bit, soak up some pressure, then I think Celtic have got it in them to break at pace. So I think Brendan Rodgers will take a similar approach, but I hope he's made some tweaks to the system.
We'll get to the team news in a wee minute or two, but Timo, you were saying about mistakes. That's what they are, basic mistakes. And I'm not sitting here and saying Celtic would have won that game in Dortmund. And all the talk was before the game Celtic could get a point. But the way that they performed, especially against St Johnstone as well. But I mean, it just showed you that basic mistakes cost you that level in the game. And I'm not saying that Celtic would run out winners or whatever, but it's just like what we would say in the West of Scotland, basic schoolboy mistakes they were making.
Yeah, I think at any level of football, players make mistakes. Top players make mistakes. Lionel Messi's given a few balls away in his day, but at this level, at this Champions League level, mistakes get punished, and that's the difference. There's a number of mistakes you might be able to make domestically in Scotland and get away with it, but Dortmund were ruthless. A few weeks ago there, Daizen Maeda made a mistake, didn't he? I think Trusty made a mistake. There was a number of them, and they all led to goals at the end of the day. So I just think that it's such a tough level of football, and any and all mistakes, generally speaking, get punished.
Now, is it a concern for Celtic fans, Regan, that Kvickas is out of the team? He's not travelled. And you think to yourself, well, they had the international break as well, but is it not a bit concerning because obviously he wasn't fit for the game on Saturday against Aberdeen, and also he didn't travel with the Celtic squad?
I think it is a concern because the fact that he's able to pick up these knocks so often is a big thing for me. I mean, but the big thing as well, as you guys will know, is you don't want to take a risk in this big match and then he's out for even longer. But something that I must say is I've not been impressed with Trusty so far, but hopefully that improves over time. Hopefully he gets used to skills, but obviously, Michael, me and you spoke about this on the Dortmund preview, and Tino was saying there that Adida is playing instead of Kyogo, and that's something that me and you spoke about in the Dortmund match. That I feel like it's I think in these big matches, I don't know if you agree, Tino, but I just feel like Celtic missed that focal point. And people were saying on Saturday, well, Aberdeen were in the game much, but that's the kind of thing that Celtic need to do in Europe. They spring upon teams and break at pace, and then see when they don't have the ball, they need to become more stable,
Yeah, I'm not completely surprised that Adida started. I know he's not in great form either, Regan. He's been a wee bit up and down in recent weeks, but I think one of the prime reasons for signing a guy like Adida is that he's so different to Kyogo. It gives you a decent alternative. And I think in these tough away fixtures in Europe, you need an outball. You need someone who will allow you to breathe. You'll be defending for large spells of the game. Atalanta will probably have the majority of possession. And sometimes you need a breather. And if you can find your striker in quite a direct way, if one of the defenders, the left back or one of the fullbacks can find it into Adida with a long ball, he's the kind of guy physically that can hold it up, allow the midfield and stuff to get up the park and just allow you to edge your way forward into their half of the park. So I think we had the discussion just a few moments ago, will Brendan Rodgers learn lessons? Will he tweak his system? I think this is quite an obvious tweaking to say that he knows he needs an outball. Kyogo's a better striker for me. He's more of a goal scorer, but it's horses for courses, and I think that's why Ida gets the nod tonight.
Yeah, no, definitely. The other bit of team news from Brendan Rodgers' press conference is Greg Taylor is out the team as well. And of course, he's a married man now, so I don't know if his wife let him go to Italy as well. But that's a different show altogether, Timo. But like it's been 5 years since Celtic won Italy. It would be brilliant if they broke the duck tonight.
It'd be amazing. I've got to say, I would take any sort of positive result. A draw would be a fine result for Celtic tonight. And it's funny because maybe we'll catch scoreline predictions towards the end of the piece, but I genuinely can't think of a time historically where I've predicted Celtic to lose any game. You always get into it, with some sort of hope, some sort of optimism. But the feeling in the camp this time around compared to before the Dortmund game, we were all full of optimism and thinking we could go to Germany and get something. This time around, everyone's feeling a wee bit more downbeat after that 7-1 result. So, I don't know. With Celtic's players, with guys like, I think Rio Hatate's a real talent. Nicholas Kuhn's a real talent. Rio Hatate. Celtic have got players that can hurt teams. So you'll always have a chance. Arne Engels, I think it's high time we got a big performance from Engels. And I think with these kind of guys in your locker, you've always got a chance in any game of football. But it's everything around that. It's keeping the door closed at the back. It's staying compact. It's, playing with a bit of streetwise, not being naive, not getting any silly red cards or giving away any silly penalties. All these things need to click into place. So it's always possible. There's always a chance in any game of football of getting a result. But I do think Atalanta are a talented side. And I think it could be a tough night, but this is a level. This is a Champions League. It's built to be tough.
Don't forget, get your comment coming in. We're on before kickoff 5:40. To be precise, and maybe 1 second go over 5:40 as well. Very, very polite there. Anyway, so Reagan's got the Celtic team for tonight's game against Atalanta.
Aye, so Michael, it's the exact same team that started against Aberdeen, apart from Adida replaces Kyogo up top. So Celtic go with Michael, Scales, Trusty, Valle, McGregor, Engels, Rio Hatate, Nicholas Kuhn, Maeda and Adida. Right off the bat there, Tino, something that I thought about yesterday, and that was that possibly Brendan Rodgers may start Bernardo, because I felt it was something we missed in Dortmund, was that kind of defensive head. Are you surprised that Bernardo is not playing?
A wee bit, yeah. A lot of folks I've spoken to as well are big fans of Bernardo. I'm a big fan as well. And I think he's actually, since he returned to the club, he's been very unlucky because he's been pretty consistent, in this early part of the season. Yeah, he finds himself back on the bench for some crucial games. So I think he can count himself a bit unlucky. I'm a massive Rio Hatate fan. I know he's been a wee bit off it, although he got his goal in the first half against Aberdeen at the weekend, and it was a pretty good goal as well. So I'm fairly happy that Hatate's in, but I just hope that we can see the best of him, because in that midfield, if Callum McGregor's on form, Arne Engels is on form, and Rio Hatate's on form, Celtic have got a serious chance. So I'm pretty pleased overall, but I can understand why some would have gone for Bernardo.
I know that 50-50, take it as you will. Most Celtic fans like Adida. Most people say, well, why did Celtic sign him? But I think he would be tested tonight in the Champions League, Timo, because obviously they're away from home in a hostile atmosphere. But also, I don't know about you and Reagan, but he reminds me of kind of like, it reminds me of kind of like Jack and Marcus in terms of like he holds the ball up, he can win fouls in the opposition's box. I mean, I'm just thinking offhand about the game he came off the bench at Ibrox, and they scored he would say an easy goal, but it was difficult. Even though Celtic dropped a point that day, and they were unlucky not to win it. But it's just like his presence on the park, and I know that sounds a bit daft to say, but his height as well, because Celtic are not the biggest team, not not even in Scottish football, but maybe in Europe as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Michael, because at this European level, the players, generally speaking, are very talented. They've got lots of ability, but they're also, by and large, quite physical, quite powerful athletes. And I think that's the difference sometimes when you get up to this level. I think Adida is a big, powerful lad, and I think he's looked a wee bit downhearted recently. I know he went away with Ireland during the break. I think he got 10 minutes in their first game, and I don't think he got any minutes in their second game. So he's kind of out of favour there as well. He possibly wasn't feeling great about that. So it's a massive confidence boost for the manager to turn around tonight and say, you're going to start in the Champions League for Celtic away from home. This is exactly why he signed. This type of game is why Adida put pen to paper and why he wanted to come to Celtic. And I think he should take huge confidence from that boost tonight. And hopefully we see that reflected in his performance.
Reagan, we always say on the show on Friday when cannot say that Ross Kentney goes to Ibrox and St Johnstone goes to Celtic Park. They should actually take the game in stages in terms of 10 minutes, 50 minutes, 20 minutes. Well, tonight the table has turned a wee bit. Do you think Celtic's a bit like St Johnstone in terms of going away from home, playing a different level of opposition? Celtic should actually keep the door shut for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and basically shut the fans up and trying to get to that kind of 40-minute mark.
I think it's very important when you go to these European places that you pay them the ultimate respect as well. I mean, these have got players that can do damage to you in 1 second. I think that's something that we've seen in Dortmund. I mean, okay, we can talk about Brendan Rodgers and his style, but also the players need to adapt on the pitch as well and say, well, this is not working well. It doesn't matter what we've been told. We need to do some in-game management and actually try and do the game in stages, because this is no disrespect, but if you go toe-to-toe with these sort of quality opposition, they'll pick you apart with one pass or one opportunity. I mean, you just need to look at Atalanta to make some reference points there. They went to Anfield, one of the notoriously difficult places in Europe, and they went there and won 3 or 4-0. And then you look at when they played probably the best team in European football last season, Bayer Leverkusen. Everybody in their granny said that Bayer Leverkusen was going to win that match. They're not lost a match through the German season. They won the German league, not losing a match. They won the German FA Cup, not losing a match. So, and then Atalanta go and beat them by 3-0. So I think Atalanta is a place where they think they can thrive in the Champions League. I want to ask Tino as well, do you feel like, who do you think Brendan Rodgers will be targeting to try and exploit? Because he spoke about in his press conference that over his 2 spells at Celtic, trying to get the Atalanta striker Lookman over to Celtic from Charlton. He was at the end, but obviously he was the guy that scored the 3 goals in the European final last year. Who do you think he'll be targeting to try and exploit the opposition?
So I don't know too much about their individual personnel, but we did look at their strikers last night, including Ademola Lookman that you mentioned there, Regan. He's a very decent player. He's had an interesting journey in football. He started life at Charlton, had a couple of seasons there. He ended up at Everton at one point. He ended up under Brendan Rodgers at Leicester at one point, which is interesting. And then he's made his way to Italy. He's now 27. And by far the biggest moment of his career to date has been the hat-trick he scored against Leverkusen in that final last year. He's not quite started at the same rate this season by the looks of it. I think he's got 2 league goals and 1 Champions League goal. He scored in their 3-0 win away to Shakhtar. But he's obviously a very decent striker. The other guy, I'll get his name in a moment, but they've got another striker, Rutige, something like that. I'll check it out.
Yes. Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, so he's got 10 goals for the season, albeit...
He scored 3 goals last weekend against Genoa.
Yeah, he's on fire. And he scored 2 goals for Italy during the break. So he's got 10 goals for the season, 8 for Atalanta, 2 for Italy. And he would be the guy to look out for. They signed him for 22 million euros. But we're talking about Arne Engels for 11 million sterling. This guy signed for 22 million euros. So there's a gulf there. There's no doubt about it. But he's a very good player who seems to be in very good form. So he would be the danger man for me. That aside, I don't know much about them individually. But they're famed for their tight defensive work, and Brendan Rodgers singled out their man marking approach. They're very disciplined and very good at that. So that in itself is a challenge for Celtic players to make sure they're doing the right work off the ball to find those spaces when we are attacking.
Do you think as well that when Reagan was saying, well, when I basically said to Reagan there, came out about keeping the game in stages as well, but that's okay. But you need to cut out the mistakes all, no matter what show it is. If we're doing the show about Celtic tonight on tomorrow night, but we're on talking about Rangers and Hearts in Europe as well. But it's just basic mistakes that they're kind of making, and it kind of backfires on them.
Yeah, there's Reagan again made the good point about game management, and I used the term about being streetwise, and I think that's so important at this level. I heard Alistair Johnson speaking, I think it was maybe last night at the stadium, and he was saying that, you know, it's a tidy arena. I think it's quite a small arena. I think it's maybe 25, 26,000.
Absolutely. I saw that interview as well. It was on Celtic TV. It actually looks not a bad gig. I think it holds about, 30,000?
It maybe not quite as much as 30. I think it's maybe 26. I'll check it out in a moment, but I think it'll be quite a hostile crowd for Celtic. I know there's a decent away support over there, but I don't know how many are going to get in. And Alistair Johnson made the point that in these kind of games, you need to silence the crowd early. You know, you need to, and that's the point you make, Michael. Treat the game in stages. Can you keep the door shut for 20 minutes? Can you then make it half an hour? Can you then get to half time? Because what we done in Dortmund was the opposite. Did we concede a goal within 4 minutes, 5 minutes, the penalty?
Yeah.
And I know Maeda equalised quite quickly, but then we've done the same again. And in Dortmund, they've got the famous yellow wall, and the last thing you want to do is give them something to shout about, and we've done that from the very start of the game. So Atalanta, they'll have similarly passionate fans, and you want to just keep them quiet and get them on edge, certainly for as long as you can. Take some time to get into the game, and then maybe just build your confidence and start to bring our own attacks to the proceedings. So yeah, there's a huge element of game management required, and again, as I say, just being streetwise.
Reagan, McGregor was up doing his presser last night before the training. I'm not sure if they trained before the last night in the skigging, because they usually train at Parkhead and then they fly out in the afternoon. Now I don't know if that's a new procedure or they've basically just done the same from COVID. I'm not really sure. But Conor McGregor said, talking about the Borussia Dortmund game, he said it was a very difficult night. It was a very difficult night last time out, but we are all feeling good going into this one. We know we are a good side, so the time has come to put a performance on the pitch, but we need to do our talking on the pitch. And I think that's important, Reagan, because we know that, you know, we've did the show for many years, and, you know, managers and players can talk about, oh, yeah, we're wonderful side and all that. The game is not plague and paper, right? It's not fantasy football, right? And then when you go over that, when you cross that white line, it's a different kettle of fish. So do you think they should do their talking on the park?
Aye, because I think probably the last big match that the Celtic won away from home in Europe was probably in it. The Italian capital of Rome, when they won 2-1 against Lazio. So I think they need to get back to actually making a proper match of it in Europe, because don't think, well, obviously Brendan Rodgers wants to get he wants to be competitive in European football as well. I think that's why Tino was talking there about spending that sort of money on the angles as well, and he would just be hoping to progress that. So I think it's important that Celtic as a club is showcased on the European stage as well, because okay, Brendan Rodgers has come back to do well in Scotland, which he probably will, because as we know, we're 6 points clear and we're well on course to win the title again. But Brendan Rodgers wants to make his mark in Europe, and he can only do that by showcasing Celtic in Europe and showing people that Celtic are not the whipping boys of European football, because people keep going on about that Brendan Rodgers has been involved in a bad result against PSG at home, bad result against Barcelona 7-1, bad result against Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich, So Celtic want to make a mark and showcase their talented players.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just going to say, Michael, I don't think there's any doubt, Regan, that Brendan Rodgers has come back here partly to restore credibility in Europe. He's been there and done it all in terms of the domestic stuff at Celtic. But I think a huge motivator for him coming back was that the club would back him accordingly in the transfer window. And you'd have to say they've spent money. Last summer wasn't great in the transfer window, but this time around they've broke the bank. They've broken the record for Arne Engels. They've just about broken it a second time for Adida. So they've spent money, they've backed him, and I think he has a real burning desire to prove himself on the European stage, because as talented a manager as Brendan Rodgers is, and I'm a massive fan of him, his CV doesn't quite stack up in terms of Europe. He's done well domestically. He's won some promotions down south. He was very unlucky at Liverpool. He's won Leicester's only ever FA Cup. He's had 2 top 5 finishes with Leicester, and he's won, what is it now, 9 trophies at Celtic, something like that. But Europe is a big gap, and I think he's got a real desire, as I say, to go and do something. So this is a stage. He has the platform. We've got a pretty favourable draw. Games like tonight are tough. Dortmund away is tough. Villa away is tough. But there's other winnable games in there. I would say Young Boys should be winnable. Bruges, a decent side, but we should be able to compete. Dynamo Zagreb, can we compete? Leipzig is a tough one as well. But there's games there where we should be picking up points. Tonight's not necessarily one of those, but you still want to put out a good performance. But I do think there's an opportunity for this side under Brendan Rodgers to progress. And it all, as I say, as we chatted through at the top there, it all comes down to what he's learned in Europe so far. It's a tough school. The Champions League is a tough school, but if you learn lessons, you can progress.
Michael, I just want to add to that as well. Like, if you look back to when I was growing up, it was Strachan in charge. Celtic beat Manchester United and AC Milan and people like that. Shakhtar from Ukraine, and like with Celtic didn't have the best of football players, but they sat men behind the ball. They were resolute, and then they broke on teams. I think that's what they need. No, I'm not advocating that every single match that you're going to do that. But what I'm saying is that obviously that I think that should be the kind of thing that Brendan Rodgers should look back upon and go, right, well, see back in 2008 and 2006, that's what Gordon Strachan did. He sat back and then he broke in teams. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, Regan, because I hate to say I'm older than Reagan, but I'm as well. But yeah, that's a good point, because as you know, a lot of was it Messi at said one time that one of the intimidating atmospheres in European football is Celtic Park, that he hates coming to Celtic Park, and any Celtic fan would say yes, but Celtic Park, apart from match day 1 against Bratislava, and listen, I know people will say, well, they're the weakest team in the group, but you still got to beat them. It doesn't matter if the a top team or on very, very poor. You can only beat who's in front of you as well.
Yeah, I mean, Celtic Park for a time there in recent years hasn't been the fortress that it once was. It all started under Martin O'Neill in the early 2000s. Gordon Strachan, as Regan said, had some massive results, beating Man United amongst others. Lenny had that brilliant result against Barcelona in 2012. But since then, since we moved kind of beyond the Ronnie Deila era into Brendan Rodgers' first era and beyond, and that includes Ange, and other top managers, Lenny coming back for a second spell, we've not really had those big results. It was great to beat Bratislava. It was so important to beat Bratislava and get the campaign off to a good start. But I think as a group, Celtic need to work really hard to make sure that it's an intimidating place to be. Some players visited Celtic Park in recent years, and it was almost a tick box exercise to come, enjoy the lovely atmosphere, and take the 3 points off Celtic as well and go home happy. We need to make it an intimidating atmosphere and a place where teams don't just come and turn us over. And that's a huge challenge because in this Champions League setup, Leipzig at home will be the toughest home game, in my opinion, of the ones that are remaining. I think they're sitting maybe second in the Bundesliga just now. They must be a pretty decent side again this time around. And the challenge is to make sure that a Leipzig or otherwise don't come to Celtic Park and get it all their own way. And that's one of a number of things you need to do to try and progress in Europe.
And I know that Timo Regan was saying about Brendan Rodgers needs to learn lessons, but I go back to it. The team's got to learn lessons as well because, as you know, when the game starts, it's over to the guys on the park, Cam McGregor and all the rest go as well. I mean, I know that you've only got one captain, but in a night like last year, we have like 11 captains basically going away from home. And you can work in tactics all week at Lennox Town or, at Celtic Park before they went over at the yesterday. But it's now over to the players. Brendan Rodgers can only shout so much at the sidelines, but it's up to the players to put it right on the park. And we've definitely not seen that against Borussia Dortmund. But again, I keep going back to it, and I'm sorry, I feel like a broken record, but it's just basic mistakes. And if Celtic sort that out, I'm not saying that we would win the game or we would Celtic's going to win the game tonight. But I mean, at this level, you can't afford to do that.
Yeah, I think everybody's got their part to play. Brendan Rodgers does his thing behind the scenes, but yeah, you're spot on, Michael. As soon as the players cross that white line, it's up to them to take the responsibility and take the manager's instructions and put them into play. And as much as I do think the system against Dortmund left is pretty wide open, you can't blame the system, for example, for Daizen Maeda's mistake. And I'm a big Maeda fan as well. It's not a witch hunt against him particularly, but just, that example comes to mind. The system doesn't cause you to make that mistake. A lack of concentration, a lack of composure on the ball has led to that mistake. There's nothing the manager can do about that. And there's, several other mistakes against Dortmund that can't be the manager's fault for me. But it's a collective, isn't it? And that's what Brendan Rodgers would say. We've all got our part to play. So as much as we've all gone on about the manager and he needs to learn his lessons, Callum McGregor and his teammates need to have their own discussions, maybe away from the manager, and address the issues that they faced and how do they learn from it and put things right tonight. Because as much as the system did leave them a wee bit exposed on match day 2 against Dortmund, I think individually there's so much more that they could have brought to the party. And actually, I'll put it back to you lads. Who really got pass marks in Dortmund? I'm not sure there was many, if any. What do you think, Regan?
Probably Maeda for his chasing back and his part in the first and only Celtic chance and goal.
Yeah.
But I think it's a difficult one as well because if you look at the players as well, they need to go and take streetwise as well, Tino, and say, right, we need to realise that in Scotland we're obviously going to dominate the matches, but in Europe, as I said earlier, you need to pay respect to who you're playing.
Yeah.
I mean, as you said, these guys can spend 20 or 30 million, and it's just change off the street, you know, and that's the big difference. You know, these guys. If you look at Atalanta over the years, look at the amount of players that Atalanta of that they've sold for big money, and that's something that hopefully Celtic can aspire to in future years. Like not just breaking the 25 million barrier, but because what signing people like Arne Engels for a 13 million all-in transfer, then hopefully you can sell them on for an even bigger fee, and then that means that the club can then spend bigger money.
Yeah, that's got to be the model, hasn't it? You know, Matt Riley's been the perfect example. You come to Celtic, I mean, he arrived particularly cheaply at 1.5 million, but you come to Celtic, you have 2.5 seasons performing well domestically and at the European level, and you'll get your big move. You get your English Premier League move or off into Europe somewhere. And I think, I say this with all respect to us as a club, but Arne Engels has sights set higher than Celtic, and that's okay. But the challenge for him now is over these next 2 seasons, what can he do? Can he be the guy that steps up? And tonight is the kind of night which is important for Celtic as a club, but it's also important for Arne Engels as an individual. He's found himself in the Belgian squad for the last 2 international breaks, and to stay in that Belgium squad, you need to perform at this level. So I think so far from Arne Engels, there's been some glimpses of some really good stuff, a couple of early goals from the penalty spot. But I do think, and I know it's early, but I do think we're due a performance from him. This tonight is why we sign guys like Arne Engels. And I'm really hoping that him and some of his other teammates, Nicholas Kuhn's the same. Nicholas Kuhn, I think, will want a move into mainland Europe again, and he might have aspirations of making the Germany squad at some point. To do that, it's not good enough to do it against Ross County or Aberdeen or St Johnstone or even Rangers. You need to do it on this stage. So that's a challenge for all of these guys tonight.
I just wanted to talk about the bench, because me and Reagan and the other guys on the show, we always talk about the strength and depth between Celtic and Rangers, and I suppose the other team in the league, the other teams in the league. But if you look at the bench tonight, I mean, Celtic has got a strong bench. Like I'm thinking about McCowan, Kyogo, Bernardo, Forrest, kind of like Ralston and Welsh as well. What do you make of the bench the last couple of weeks? From the beginning of the season, is it as stronger as you thought for a long time?
I have. So sorry, Tino, you go.
You go, Regan. Sure, you go.
I was just going to say that in terms of the bench, I think that was something that Brendan Rodgers kind of said last season that needs to improve, because I remember a press conference last season, guys, when he spoke about his first time here, when he had on the bench, he had Moussa Dembele, he had Edward, he had Ryan Christie, he had Stuart Armstrong, you know, and I think that's the big change from this season in terms of what I feel like the bench is so much stronger. And the biggest example I can give to that is the match that we played a few weeks ago. We were 1-0 down because of a penalty. And then he brings on Bernardo and Luke, who he signed at the very last minute from Dundee. You know, and people could go, well, it's great for this person. He's a big Celtic supporter. He's from like nearby and stuff like that. But I think Brendan Rodgers knew, like, he wasn't just signing him because the big Celtic supporter and he's done pretty well in the Scottish League. He knew that he could be in the Celtic team and making a big impact.
Yeah, I think one of the big pluses about tonight, when you look at that lineup plus the benches, that you've got genuine options and guys that can go and change games. I think last season under Brendan Rodgers, and even in Ange's first couple of seasons, at times they looked down at the bench and I think they must have shaken their heads as managers because they just didn't have the quality. I remember Ange had to get by with some of the young boys, you know, and I say this with every respect, young boys like Owen Moffat and a couple of other boys like that who were never really going to make it as Celtic. And now, tonight, Brendan Rodgers can look down. Kyogo Furuhashi is Celtic's #1 striker. He's the best striker at the club. and he is an option off the bench, he can absolutely change games and get you a goal out of nothing. I think Luke McCowan has covered himself in particular glory so far at Celtic. I think he's just shown that he can play at this level. I wasn't sure when he signed. I was okay about it, but I was kind of ambivalent, to be honest with you. Didn't know too much about him. I hadn't seen him too much. And I think he's done very little wrong since he came in, to the point where I asked the question, is he maybe due a start in a game like tonight? He's not got the nod on this occasion, but I think he's a very good option to come off the bench. Paulo Bernardo is an excellent option. And then you've got maybe some limited options in the wings. James Forrest has been phenomenal for Celtic, but I think it's okay to say that his best days are behind him, but maybe he can come on and do an experienced job. Yang and Palma split opinions. I actually quite like both of them. I don't know what you guys think, but at the moment they're a wee bit out of the picture. So, I mean, Michael, I'd put it back to you. Do you think the likes of a Yang or a Palma or a Luke McCowan can come in and change the game for us?
I think that if you hold a gun to my head and say pick one, I would say McCowan, because I don't see anything in Yang or Palmer. He flatters to deceive every time he's been there. I see. I mean, the point is this, right? If you put Palmer up against and the Kuhn, that's his name. The name escaped me there. Now, the two of them has been there for the same length of time, right? Kuhn, if you look at his form this season, he's a new player. He's a new signing to Brendan Rodgers. Whereas Palmer, it's just the same old Palmer. I'm sorry if you're a Palmer fan or more watching this, but I mean, he doesn't do anything from it. Okay, he scored a few goals in pre-season and against, was it Chelsea and Man City? He done that, and they were two brilliant goals, by the way. But it's really done nothing in the games tonight, in the game so far. But when you see this, he'll come on and score a goal tonight.
I hope so. I think Louis Palmer looks like the ultimate confidence player. I think when he arrived at Celtic Park, he got off to a decent start. He was vital to a win we had over Motherwell, a late one there at Fir Park. He scored against Atletico Madrid in the 2-2 draw. So he showed that he's got something. But to make it at Celtic or a club at our level, you need to be consistent. There's no good having one good game in 5 or whatever it is. So I think for Yang and Palma, my argument about those two guys is that I've seen it in flashes. So at times I've sat down to watch Celtic, or I've been at Celtic Park watching them, and they've done it. They've done some impressive things, but they've not done it often enough. But the fact that they've done it at all gives me a wee bit of hope that there might be a chance for them. And there would be no better night than tonight for one of them to come off the bench, maybe create a moment, create an opportunity, maybe even grab a goal to kickstart your Celtic career, because sometimes making it at a club like Celtic is all about kind of having that moment, that moment that just wins you the favour of the fans, gives you that massive confidence boost and lets you kick on. But guys like Palma and Yang need to look at Nicholas Kuhn and say, okay, what's he done? Because he didn't have a great start either, but he's worked hard at it.
So he's a kind of benchmark, you would say.
Yeah, exactly right. He's proven that you can go away, work on yourself physically, because I think Nicholas Kuhn came back in good shape. I thought he was looking quite strong after the pre-season. And I think Yang and Palma need to look at him as a bit of an inspiration and say, okay, Nicholas Kuhn has gone and worked on himself, paid close attention to the tactics, does what the manager wants him to do, and he's getting his rewards. Nicholas Kuhn is probably Celtic's best player this season so far. So Yang and Palma need to take a leaf out of his book if they're going to have any chance of succeeding.
Going back to Adida Regan, this is his big and best chance to show Brendan Rodgers and the whole of the Celtic support that he can score goals at this level, he can perform at this level. Because I remember that most of all Celtic fans, as I say, get there on to Timo 50-50 were saying, well, who's he? I've never heard of him. And why are we signing players from Norwich? Sometimes I feel as though that not only Scottish football fans, but fans in general are a bit snobby of the players. I mean, I go back to Henrik Larsson. Nobody heard of him, and look what happened to him. Like he's got a night in a few weeks at the Hydro as well. You know, Lubo Moravchik. I can go on and on and on. You know.
Aye, you're spot on, because I made the point a few weeks ago that I don't feel like Celtic would have won the title last year if it wasn't for Adida, because all off the bench, I think Brendan Rodgers, I think O's a quality player, but it's like Tino said, like I don't think Brendan Rodgers trusts O to step up in the big moments. You look at over the last 4 or 5 matches of last season. I remember the match against Motherwell, with about 4 or 5 games to go. Brendan Rodgers took Yogo off after 45 minutes, and then he brought on Adida. Adida came on and scored 2.
Yeah.
And Celtic won. Celtic won the match. Then he was a big part of Celtic winning the title because he scored those 2 goals at Rugby Park as well when the Celtic won 6-0 to clinch the title. So and then he also, like you said, he went to Ibrox and got that goal in the 3-3 draw. So
and the cup final as well.
The cup final as well. Aye. So I think you need to say that Brendan Rodgers trusts him. He knows what he's going to do, and I think it's like Tino was saying there. Like if you look to like people like Palmer, Yang, and even throwing O in the category, Brendan Rodgers obviously likes these guys, but I don't think he can understand what he's going to get on a regular basis, because it's like one of those things that Tino was talking about 5 minutes ago, where like if you become a Celtic player, you need to do it more often than anything else, because they're paying you big money and they expect big things from you. So I think in terms of Adida, this is why he chose to play for Celtic. This is why he chose to become at the point Celtic's record signing until Engels joined. So I think Brendan Rodgers told the board they wanted him, and this is someone that they made sure they brought in, because I feel like, as I said earlier, like that's someone that we're missing. I mean, growing up, I used to love Jan Vennegoor Hesselink. I mean, Jan Vennegoor Hesselink wasn't a typical brilliant striker, but what he did was he made it difficult for the centre backs. He stretched them. I always remember that last minute goal he scored against Rangers. Great ball in, and then he just got ahead of the extra defender. I mean, I'm sure that's something that Brendan Rodgers is told the wide players tonight. If you get that ball in for Adida, then he'll be in there. And it's a bit of a different approach as well, because it's like when you watch Scotland, right? That's one of the big reasons why Steve Clarke favours the Dykes over someone like a Shango the Hearts, because see, when you go away to Spain or Norway, it's important that you win throw-ins, and it's no different to Celtic in Europe, because see, if you're a Callum McGregor, it's important that these guys get breaks throughout the match, and because if it's constant pressure all the time, then it's inevitable that eventually they're going to break through. So it's important at times that you just break up the play, you take your time. Not that I'm saying that you waste a bit of time, but I think on European nights it is important that you respect who you're playing.
I actually think you do waste a bit of time in Europe, or you should do. Just slow the game down, let the game be played at your pace, take the sting out of it, win free kicks high up the park, win those throw-ins that you talked about, Regan. I think these are all things that you want to do to try and break up the rhythm of the opponents. So I think Adida, as I said before, Adida and Kyogo are so different in terms of how they play, but they can both have a serious impact in different ways. And I actually do think Adida, generally speaking, might be more suited to a game like tonight, because he can get you up the park, he can win those fouls, he can get involved in the physical battles, and he can just ruffle things up a wee bit and make life difficult for the Atalanta defenders. And I think Brendan Rodgers has put huge trust in guys like Adida, by convincing the board to spend £9.5 million on him. So, Brendan Rodgers has gone out on a limb there to say, I want this guy, go and get him. And I think now is the time, on a game like tonight, when he's been given the nod, for Adida to start paying back that trust. It's a two-way street. Everyone plays their part. And I think Adida has got a huge opportunity. And I think Adida showed last season that he can be the big game player. Scored against Rangers, scored in cup finals, scored on league winning nights at Rugby Park. I think he thrives on the big occasion. He's an international footballer. He's got 20 plus caps for Ireland. I think he'll be thriving on this tonight, and I'm excited to see what he does. Actually, it's a tough game for Celtic. It's tough to see he's getting a result, but I'm excited to see what a guy like Adida brings to the party.
Don't forget, we'll be back at 8 as well for the post-match show. So get your comments in for that one. Get your comments in very quickly if you want to ask myself, Regan, or Kimo a question before we go off a couple of minutes. If I just wanted to bring in Brendan Rodgers' comments, Regan, from yesterday's press conference. He was in good spirits as always going into the game. I don't know if he'll be in good spirits after the game, but let's see it 8:10 tonight. He says, yes, we're looking forward to it. We are playing against a very good team, and he says we deserve to be at this level of the competition. You could maybe guess what the question was there, Regan. And he said that we hope to learn from Dortmund our lessons, but it's basically what we've been saying for the past half an hour on the show, Regan.
I think it also is important that Brendan Rodgers instills that belief in the players that they can that they can do something at this level. Because it's okay Brendan Rodgers saying it to the press every time to try and help them, but it's important for the players actually to go out there and do it. It's like you said earlier, it's important to do your talking on the park. And I think in terms of Celtic, I think they'll just be hoping to do that, because this time next year, they'll be playing some very difficult qualifiers as well. So it's important to get that feeling in a big pressure match that you can do it, because I don't know about you guys, but I remember the qualifiers of our recent years, and they were torture. I mean, you think back to the Astana one when Celtic won the first leg by 5-0. A great couple of goals, and then it was 4-0 to Astana straight away, and then Champs scored so to make it 6-5 overall. So it's important that Celtic become streetwise in these matches. They understand what it takes to win as well.
Yeah, and we're going back to qualifiers next year by the looks of it. So, all going well, hopefully Celtic would win the league again. But the way the coefficient's gone, we'll have to play qualifiers. And I agree, you talk about nervy qualifiers. I even think of games like Hapoel Beersheva, if you remember that one. I think a big goal. I remember further back to Shakhtar Karagandhi, where we lost.
Last second.
James Forrest, brilliant. We lost 2-0 away from home. And Jamesy Forrest, it looked like it was going to extra time. Jamesy Forrest made it 3-0 at Celtic Park. And I think, was it Lenny ran right down the touchline, all of these things. Great stuff eventually when the whistle goes, but they're so nervous, these kind of games, because there's so much riding on them. And I think, even the fact that we know we'll face those qualifiers next season, all going well, Celtic have got to take the experience this season. We've got at least, including tonight, 6 games in this Champions League group. You've got to learn with each and every one. You've got to become better at this level. You've got to become more accustomed at this level, so that when we do go into the qualifiers, and hopefully we do make it through to the playoffs at least, but whether we do or not, you want to make sure that you're learning all the way, so that when you do have these qualifiers next summer or July or August or whenever they take place, that you're confident that you're good enough at this level to go and take care of them.
Okay, so that's us for tonight, and we'll be back at 8. Big thanks to Timo from the Celtic Exchange podcast. Give that a listen, and we'll hope to have you back on soon on the show. Thanks to Regan as always, and thanks to everybody that's watching. And we will be back at 8 o'clock here on Independence Live.
Thanks, lads.
Celtic in the Champions League with all the build-up and reaction on Independence Live.